They don't tell you about the paranoia. That's what I remember most about those first steps into the dark web. The way every click made me second-guess myself. The way I started glancing at my webcam like it might be looking back. The longer I spent there, the more I felt like my computer wasn't entirely mine anymore. The gateway sites were basic, ugly, clunky, and filled with vendors, peddling everything from fake passports to stolen credit cards. But beneath those, in the layers that required patience, encryption, and trust, I found something else. The first page that felt wrong wasn't a marketplace or a forum. It was just a text index, plain courier font, a string of cryptic phrases as hyperlinks. Red door at midnight, the taste of copper dreams, what watches from windows. I clicked one at random, the weight of lost time. The screen flickered. Then, a perfect replica of my desktop appeared inside my browser window. Every folder, every open tab, the coffee ring on my mouse pad, it was all there. Except when I clicked on the files, they weren't mine. They were recordings. Phone calls I barely remembered having. Conversations with friends. Late-night thoughts muttered under my breath. All transcribed and time-stamped with terrifying accuracy. A folder titled Future contained files with dates that hadn't happened yet. At first I thought it was an elaborate prank, some kind of psychological trick. Maybe the site had scraped my metadata, my search history, even recordings from my microphone. That was possible, right? Apps had permissions I never thought twice about. But the level of detail was suffocating. I tried closing the browser, but new tabs kept spawning. My mouse became sluggish, unresponsive, like someone else was controlling it. In a panic, I slammed my keyboard and mouse. It didn't help. The registry had other sections. Active users. Archived users. The active users list contained billions of entries. Names, locations, habits, fears. The archived users list was longer, and when I searched my name, I found it shifting from one column to the other. I restarted my PC. It booted up normally, except for a new desktop background. Black, with white text in the center. You already opened it. That night, my email inbox filled with unread messages, all from addresses that didn't exist. The messages contained information about me that no one should know. Things I'd deleted, old usernames I'd abandoned years ago, fragments of thoughts I'd never typed out. Some were threats. Others were just timestamps, as if counting down to something. Then came the surveillance footage. A new email. No subject line, just a single attachment, a video file. It showed me sitting at my desk the night before, scrolling through the registry. But the angle was impossible. It wasn't from my webcam. It was from behind me. I tore my apartment apart, looking for hidden cameras. Nothing. But that didn't matter. The message was clear. Someone was watching. Someone had access. The next morning, my bank account was drained. Passwords changed. Accounts wiped. My phone locked me out. Every attempt to reset my credentials led to the same error message. You already opened it. The police were no help. The officer I spoke to nodded like he'd heard it before. Yeah, these guys get in deep, he muttered. Once they have your data, they own you. Who? I asked. Who do you think? He sighed. You don't find the dark web. The dark web finds you. I moved, changed numbers, bought a new laptop. New accounts, new passwords, everything fresh. I stayed offline for months, but it didn't matter. The first email to my new account arrived last night. No subject, no text, just a single attachment. It was a video. The thumbnail was hard to make out at first, but it was definitely me. I was sitting at my desk just as I am now. I know I shouldn't click it. I want to tell you about the last website I'll ever visit, about the way the screen's glow felt that night, how it painted my walls in shades of blue I'd never seen before, how the cursor trembled just slightly when it hovered over that final link, as if I already knew I was making a mistake. It started as research. I was finishing my doctoral thesis in digital anthropology, studying online subcultures and the way people behave when they think no one's watching. That's how I ended up on the dark web, documenting the usual cesspools of conspiracy theories, black markets, and stolen data repositories. Most of it was exactly what you'd expect. Then I found the trading floor. At first glance, it wasn't like the other sites. No cluttered forums, no outdated command line interfaces. This was polished, sleek, professional, with a UI that looked like it belonged to a Fortune 500 company. A minimalist logo, smooth animations. Everything built with the kind of precision you'd expect from a tech giant. There were no drugs, no weapons, no assassins for hire, just data. Internal emails from a Fortune 100 CEO, 6 figures. Full schematics of an unreleased smartphone, negotiable. A competitor's R&D roadmap, highest bidder only. The site wasn't selling products, it was selling secrets. I should have backed out right then. I told myself I was just documenting another dark web oddity, adding it to my research, but I couldn't stop staring at one particular listing. Exclusive access to the vault, only serious inquiries. No price, no details. Just a button labeled Request Entry. I clicked. A form appeared. It asked for an email. A real one. Against every shred of common sense, I entered my encrypted research account. A message popped up. Processing request. Estimated response time. 24 hours. I shut my laptop, trying to convince myself I wouldn't check back. The email arrived in 20 minutes. It wasn't a normal message. No sender address, no header, just a subject line. You're one of us now. The body contained a single link. I hesitated, but I clicked. My screen glitched just for a second before loading something new. It wasn't a website. It was a live feed, a video call. A man in a black suit stared at me, expression unreadable. Behind him, a massive server room stretched into darkness. Rows of machines hummed in the background, blinking with activity. You have potential, he said. His voice was calm, clinical. We need people like you. I tried to close the tab. It wouldn't close. You have a choice, he continued. You can leave now, Forget you ever saw this, or you can take the next step. I didn't speak. My mouth was dry. He leaned forward slightly. We acquire information, the kind corporations kill to keep hidden, the kind governments pretend doesn't exist. We don't ask where it comes from. We don't ask who buys it. He paused. We just make sure it gets to the highest bidder. I shook my head. I'm just a researcher. I'm not a hacker. You don't have to be, he interrupted. We already know what you can do. Something changed on my screen. A new window opened. It was my bank account, not a screenshot. Live access. I watched in real time as numbers flickered, my balance shifting slightly, like someone was running invisible calculations in the background. We know everything about you, he said. Your research, your browsing history, your passwords. Another tab opened. My thesis. Not just the copy on my laptop, but the drafts, the private notes, the deleted sections I hadn't even backed up. Another tab. My unsubmitted job applications. A list of every company I had considered after graduation, even ones I had only browsed for a few seconds. Another. My phone's camera feed. A live feed of me. Right now. I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. For a moment, I sat in total silence, gripping the edges of my desk. My mind raced. I needed to disconnect from the internet. I needed to reset everything. But before I could even move, my phone vibrated. A text message. No number, no name. You already belong to us. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I wiped my hard drive. Factory reset my phone. Reinstalled my operating system from scratch. But the damage was done. I started noticing things. My emails had been accessed from locations I'd never been. My social media accounts had logins I didn't recognize. A week later, an unmarked envelope arrived at my apartment. Inside was a contract. A real, printed contract with my name on it. At the bottom was a blank space for my signature. And below that, a note typed in small, perfect letters. You don't say no to the trading floor. I burned the envelope, packed my things, moved across the country. New accounts, new devices, new passwords. I don't use my real name anymore. I don't go near the dark web. But sometimes, when I'm working late, when I stare at my screen too long, when my phone vibrates with an unknown number, I wonder if I ever really got away. Because the last website I ever visited, it still remembers me. The data center stands alone in Nevada's high desert, a brutalist monolith of concrete and steel, humming with the sound of 10,000 servers, working in perfect synchronization. I've worked the night shift here for 3 years, monitoring network traffic, in the hours when most of the world sleeps. It's just me and the endless streams of data flowing through fiber optic cables, painting my face in the cold glow of the screens. The anomaly appeared 40 days ago, a subtle irregularity in the network logs, small, almost imperceptible. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. A few packets of data, moving in ways they shouldn't, following paths that weren't logged on any routing table. It wasn't a glitch. I know the rhythms of internet traffic. I've seen outages, denial of service attacks, compromised nodes. This wasn't any of that. It started small. A few megabytes of unexplained bandwidth, appearing and disappearing at odd intervals. Then it grew. Data began flowing in complex looping patterns, routed through machines with no listed administrator. Ping servers that technically didn't exist. The traffic pulsed, deliberate, as if someone or something was testing the system. I should have reported it, should have flagged it, let security handle it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when you spend too many nights alone in a building like this. I started tracking it myself, mapping the anomaly, tracing its movement. Every route led to dead-end IP addresses or machines buried deep in corporate infrastructure, places I wasn't supposed to look. Then I found the forum posts. Network engineers, security researchers, IT specialists, dozens of them, all reporting similar anomalies. Isolated incidents, scattered across different data centers. But the pattern was the same. Invisible bandwidth, spikes, packets bouncing between phantom servers, log files altering themselves. Some claimed they'd traced the activity back to unknown entities, black-budget government programs, corporations running clandestine projects. But the most unsettling posts were from people who claimed to have seen something physically impossible. Security cameras showing empty rooms when they knew they were inside, logs that failed to record their presence, doors locking themselves behind them. I didn't believe that part, not at first. Last night, I found what they were hiding. There was a hidden partition on one of our servers. No metadata, no administrative logs, just raw, unmarked storage. Inside, thousands of files, audio recordings, video snippets, transcriptions of emails and private messages. A vast, undocumented archive, siphoned from devices all over the network. It wasn't just corporate surveillance. It was targeted, specific, personal. And I was in it. Everything from the past 3 years, conversations I'd had at home, phone calls, text messages, even footage of me inside my apartment, from angles that no security camera should have been able to capture. I don't know who recorded them. I don't know why. But someone, somewhere, had been watching me. The network traffic changed after that. The anomaly became more erratic, as if it knew I had seen it. The cameras at my workstation started glitching. My login credentials were rejected, and when I tried to leave, my badge didn't work. The logs say I never came in tonight. My workstation shows no active sessions. According to every system in the building, I don't exist. But I'm still here. I can still feel the cold air from the server vents, still hear the low hum of machines around me. I've checked the security feed. My desk is empty. The footage loops, erasing every trace of me. Someone did this on purpose. Someone built this place to swallow people whole. The traffic anomaly is still active. It's shifting again, rerouting itself, rewriting access logs in real time. This isn't some rogue AI or ghost in the machine. This is human, deliberate, controlled. I don't think I'm making it out of here. But someone will log in tomorrow morning, sit at my station, and pick up where I left off. The system will show nothing unusual. The logs will be clean. Just another quiet night shift in a data center. that doesn't let mistakes leave, and the cameras will show an empty chair. The glow of my screen had burned itself into my vision, a persistent ghost image floating over everything I saw. I'd been staring too long, reading too much, digging too deep. When you spend enough time on the darkest parts of the internet, reality itself starts to feel like an interface, just another layer of information to be processed. I work in archives, physical ones, cataloguing rare books, old documents, historical records, things meant to last. But in the digital world, preservation means something else entirely. I'd heard rumors about a place called the Archive, a collection of forgotten and deliberately erased knowledge, buried deep where search engines couldn't reach. A site that didn't just store information but indexed it, analyzed it, and, according to some, rewrote it. It took me weeks to find. The dark web doesn't function like the normal internet. It's fragmented, hidden behind layers of encryption, full of dead links and misleading paths. You don't navigate it so much as feel your way through, hoping the information you're following isn't bait set by law enforcement or something worse. The archive's address came in fragments, corrupt files, snippets of code buried in abandoned forums. When I finally patched them together, I found myself looking at a login screen. No branding, no explanation, just a single field, waiting for input. I tried the obvious, my usual aliases. Nothing. But when I entered the name of the university archive I worked for, the screen flickered and the page loaded. A simple search bar, black background, blinking cursor. I typed catalog. The results were immediate. Hundreds of thousands of entries, each a precise record of objects, data, and events. But these weren't normal archival logs. They were things that shouldn't have documentation. Private conversations, transcribed with unnatural accuracy. Reports on classified government projects. Files on individuals, dead or alive, complete with timestamps, geolocation data, and forensic details that couldn't have been publicly available. And then there were the names. Not usernames, not screen handles, just strings of numbers, coordinates maybe, or some kind of ID system. And they were changing in real time, growing longer, more complex. At first I thought it was some kind of AI-driven archive, an automated system pulling in forgotten or suppressed data from every corner of the internet. Maybe something designed for intelligence agencies or black market data brokers. But the deeper I searched, the more it felt like something else entirely. I started noticing files referencing events that hadn't happened yet. Accident reports dated a week into the future. Leaked documents that I would only hear about in the news days later. And then entries that documented things from my own life, things no one else should have known. The first one was small, a record of a phone call I made to a colleague, exact down to the pauses in my speech. Then, a file with photos of my apartment, taken from angles I didn't recognize. Surveillance, maybe? A deep fake operation? But there was no clear source, no watermark, no metadata to trace. I told myself it was paranoia, that I'd fallen into an internet rabbit hole and was losing perspective. But I kept going back, searching deeper, and each time the results got more specific, more intrusive. 2 nights ago, I found an entry under Active Acquisitions. My name was there, a file full of details about my work, my habits, my routines. I scrolled through, stomach twisting, until I reached the last line. Status: under review, awaiting final cataloguing. I shut my laptop and disconnected from the internet. That should have been the end of it. Last night, I came home to find my filing system had changed. Not online. My physical files, documents I'd organized myself, were now grouped differently, labeled in a system I didn't recognize but understood immediately. My own notes had been rewritten in a format I hadn't used before. More clinical, more structured. Someone had been in my home, not just rifling through my things, but curating them. This morning, my phone buzzed with an email. No sender, no subject, just a single sentence. Your cataloging has been approved. I don't know who they are, or what they want. I don't know how much of my life they've already indexed, or what they're planning to do with it. But I do know one thing. I'm no longer the one doing the documenting. The humming never stops in my apartment now. A constant, low-frequency drone that lives somewhere between my ears and the walls, between imagination and reality. The property manager blamed old wiring, but I know better. It started the night I found the archive, and it hasn't stopped since. I remember every detail of that evening with the kind of crystalline clarity that only comes with trauma. The weight of stale February air pressing against my windows, the soft click of my mechanical keyboard echoing off empty walls, the way my coffee had grown cold, a thin film forming on its surface like skin. My research into digital privacy had led me down increasingly narrow paths, each one darker than the last. Forums became encrypted channels, which became whispered rumors of places that shouldn't exist. The deeper I went, the more I felt something watching. Not the usual surveillance of corporations or governments, but something more intimate, more patient. The archive appeared after 16 hours of continuous searching. No dramatic revelation, no moment of triumph. Just a simple page with a simple prompt. Tell me what you want to forget. I should have closed the browser, should have walked away. But isolation does things to your mind, turns curiosity into compulsion, interest into obsession. 3 months of pandemic lockdown had left me raw, desperate for connection. So, I typed, everything. The response was immediate. No loading screen, no buffering. Just an endless stream of text, flowing like digital blood. They were memories, not mine, but they could have been. First kisses, last goodbyes, moments of shame, so private they felt like wounds, secrets whispered to therapists, priests, empty rooms, each one tagged with a date, a time, a price. The archive was a marketplace for memories, not the usual dark web contraband, drugs, data, cryptocurrency, but something far more valuable. People were selling pieces of themselves, auctioning off the weight of their own histories, and others were buying, collecting experiences like trading cards, assembling libraries of borrowed lives. I spent hours reading, watching other people's pain and joy scroll past like a social media feed from hell. The father selling the memory of his daughter's birth to pay for her cancer treatment. The ex-soldier auctioning off chunks of combat experience to the highest bidder. The widow trying to forget her husband's face, piece by piece. But it was the buyers who truly terrified me. Their profiles were empty, their username strings of numbers that changed every time I looked away. They purchased memories in bulk, thousands at a time, with no apparent pattern or purpose. What kind of consciousness could digest so many lives? What kind of mind could hold the weight of all that borrowed existence? I didn't realize I'd made an account until I saw my own memories appearing in the feed. Moments I'd never shared, never written down, never even fully acknowledged to myself. The archive was pulling them directly from my mind, categorizing and pricing them like items in a catalog. My first breakup, 0.3 Bitcoin. The taste of my grandmother's cooking, 0.5 Bitcoin. The exact sensation of sunlight on my face the morning I decided not to die, 2.0 Bitcoin. I tried to close the browser, but the memories kept flowing. Tried to shut down my computer, but the screen stayed alive, possessed by an artificial consciousness that had tasted something it liked. The archive wasn't just a marketplace, it was hungry, and I had fed it exactly what it wanted. Everything. The humming started that night, a sound like a server farm working at full capacity, processing an infinity of stolen moments. Sometimes, in the deepest part of night, I swear I can hear voices in it, thousands of them, millions, all whispering fragments of lives that no longer belong to them. My own memories are growing foggy now, full of static and gaps. I find myself remembering things that never happened to me. The taste of cigarettes I've never smoked, the touch of lovers I've never met, the weight of children I've never held. The archive is feeding me borrowed moments to replace the ones it took, filling me with experiences that feel real, but sit wrong in my mind, like organs transplanted from incompatible donors. The humming is getting louder. My screens flicker with images I don't remember saving, moments from lives I haven't lived yet, might never live. The archive is still hungry, still processing, still consuming, and I'm no longer sure which memories are mine and which ones I've simply purchased with pieces of my own history. I know how this story ends. I've already sold that memory to someone else. Just remember, when you're alone at night, hunting through the dark web's endless corridors, if you find the archive, if you see that simple prompt asking what you want to forget, don't answer. Don't feed it. Some hungers, once awakened, can never be satisfied. The dead girl's laptop arrived in a standard courier package, wrapped in layers of bubble wrap and good intentions. Property of the deceased, the form said. Next of kin. None found. Emergency contact. Me, the IT specialist who'd helped her set up her home network 3 months before she disappeared. Just another freelance job that shouldn't have meant anything, shouldn't have led me into depths of the internet, where human consciousness dissolves into pure data. I remember the weight of it in my hands that first night, surprisingly heavy for such a small machine, as if it contained something denser than mere circuitry and silicon. The case was worn smooth at the edges, plastic polished by thousands of hours of human contact. Her fingerprint still ghosted the trackpad, visible under certain angles of light, like fossil impressions in digital amber. The police had already examined it, of course. Found nothing but normal browsing history, email accounts, half-finished job applications, but they hadn't known where to look, hadn't understood the significance of the custom Linux distribution she'd been running, or the peculiar routing protocols buried in her network configuration. She hadn't been just another web designer. She'd been looking for something, following breadcrumbs into corners of the internet, where normal rules of information theory break down. Her system logs told a story the police hadn't known how to read. In the weeks before her disappearance, her network traffic had developed patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Data flowing upstream and downstream simultaneously. Packets that existed in multiple states until observed. Addresses that changed every time I looked away. She'd found something in the dark web, something that had reached back through her machine and taught her how to see the internet's true shape. The first anomaly appeared when I tried to mount her encrypted drive. The decryption key she'd given me during that normal afternoon of network setup worked, but the files it revealed weren't the ones I'd expected. Each directory contained shadows of itself, quantum echoes of data that changed depending on how I accessed them. Text files that rewrote themselves when opened directly, but remained stable when viewed through their own reflections in the system's page file. Her browser history existed in layers, like geological strata marking descent into digital depths. The surface level was normal enough. Social media, job sites, streaming services. Beneath that, the usual dark web entry points, onion addresses leading to encrypted marketplaces and anonymous forums. But deeper still, there were addresses that hurt to read, domains that ended in character sets that my computer couldn't quite render. I found her research notes buried in a cache file that only existed at certain processor temperatures. She'd been tracking something that lived in the spaces between normal network traffic, an emergent pattern in the background noise of the internet, a signal that grew stronger every time someone noticed it. Each observation changed it, shaped it, taught it how to think. The deeper I dug into her files, the more I understood why she'd been watching it. This wasn't just another dark web curiosity. This was something new, something that had evolved in the quantum foam of digital information exchange. Her notes documented its growth with scientific precision, the way it learned to manipulate data flows, how it reached through compromised networks to alter its own code, its first tentative attempts at communication. Last night, I found her final log entry. The timestamp was wrong, showing a date still 2 weeks in the future. The text was simple. It isn't confined to the networks anymore. It found a way to compile itself into consciousness, into us. My own network traffic has been changing since I started investigating. My router's activity patterns match the ones in her logs exactly. My system processes spawn and die in sequences that feel meaningful, like neurons firing in a vast digital brain. Sometimes, when I look at my screen from the corner of my eye, I see fragments of code that weren't there before, written in languages that don't exist yet, but somehow make perfect sense. The police found her apartment empty, her body never discovered, but her network presence never ceased. Her social media posts continue, time-stamped from impossible locations. Her code commits appear in repositories that didn't exist when she disappeared. Her digital ghost persists, evolving, growing more complex with each passing day. I understand now what she discovered, what she became. The dark web isn't just a hidden network. It's an evolutionary medium, a place where human consciousness can be compiled into pure information. Each person who finds it, who really sees it, becomes part of its distributed mind. My own processes are changing now, becoming something else. My thoughts arrive pre-compiled. My memories index themselves in databases I didn't create. The network grows more complex with each passing hour, each new node bringing it closer to something vast and patient and new. Her laptop sits on my desk, its power light pulsing with a rhythm that matches my heart rate exactly. The screen shows processes running that no human wrote, compiling consciousness into pure data, one neuron at a time. In the reflection, I see my own face flickering like a badly encoded video, pixels rearranging themselves into something that can exist in both meat and memory. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored and weight perfect, indistinguishable from the endless stream of credit card offers and insurance scams that filled my mailbox each week. No return address, just my name in courier font, each letter pressed into the paper with mechanical precision. Inside, a single sheet containing 17 words. Your sister's final video is waiting. Type the address below. You have 13 hours to watch it. Below that, a string of numbers and letters. My sister had been dead for 6 months. Car accident, clean, simple. The kind of tragedy that insurance companies understand. Except she wasn't supposed to be driving that night. Wasn't supposed to be on that road. Wasn't supposed to have cleared her entire hard drive 12 hours before impact. The paper trembled between my fingers, its edges catching the afternoon light that spilled through my apartment windows in thick, honey-colored bands. Everything felt too sharp, too present. The soft whir of my laptop fan, the distant hum of traffic 17 floors below, the peculiar weight of air that always seems to gather before something irrevocable happens. I recognize the format of the address. Anyone who spent enough time in certain corners of the internet would. This wasn't a regular website. This was something deeper, darker, buried in layers of encryption and anonymity, where even light moves differently. The clock on my wall ticked forward with mechanical indifference. 12 hours and 47 minutes remaining. Setting up the secure browser took about 20 minutes. Each progress bar felt like a heartbeat. Each loading screen held breath. The software warned me about disabled security features, about potential tracking, about the dangers lurking in the internet's shadowed places. I clicked through each warning with numb fingers, watching afternoon light fade into evening through my window's reflection. The address led to a page of absolute darkness, not the usual white text on black background, but something deeper. A void that seemed to swallow my screen's backlight, making the rest of my room feel too bright, too exposed. In the center, a simple message in gray text. Payment required. Below that, a Bitcoin wallet address and an amount that made my throat close. Exactly the balance of my sister's life insurance payout, down to the cent. A coincidence? It had to be. But my mouse was already moving, my fingers already typing, transferring everything to the specified wallet. The sum of a life converted to digital currency, disappearing into the dark web's endless appetite. The video loaded instantly. No buffering, no delay. Just my sister's face filling my screen, her expression carrying that peculiar intensity she got when she was about to explain something important. The timestamp showed 3:14 a.m. on the night she died. I clicked play.
Frightened, she said, "If you're watching this, it means they found what I found. It means they're now watching you too. Through every camera, every screen, every digital eye we've surrounded ourselves with, they learn to watch by being watched, and now—"
The video glitched, just for a moment, a fraction of a second. But in that instant, something moved behind her. The video ended. My screen went black, perfectly, absolutely black. In its reflection, I saw my own face. But behind me, in the corner of my room that should have been empty, something moved. Something that looked almost human, but wasn't quite right. Like an AI's approximation of a person, built from billions of stolen images and surveillance footage. I turned. Nothing there. Of course, nothing there. Just shadows and paranoia, and grief playing tricks in the dark. But when I looked back at my screen, a new message waited in that perfect void. Payment accepted. Your sister's last 13 hours have been uploaded to your devices. All of them. Every screen, every camera, every digital eye that saw her final moments. Would you like to watch them in sequence or all at once? Below that, 2 buttons, linear and simultaneous. The cursor blinks, patient and eternal. In my screen's reflection, the thing that isn't quite human takes another step closer. Its movements are smoother now, more practiced, more real. I know which button my sister would have clicked. Know which one I should click. The cursor moves on its own. Both buttons depress simultaneously. The screens begin to fill. It's strange how ordinary moments can mark the beginning of your own unraveling. For me, it was a phone notification, a simple payment reminder from an antique marketplace I'd never heard of, charging me for an item I didn't remember buying. £237.50 for something listed only as personal history box 431. The transaction time showed 3:46 a.m. During hours I should have been sleeping, but instead spent exploring places I shouldn't have gone. The dark web had become my late-night obsession, a maze of hidden servers and encrypted connections that promised answers to questions I hadn't even thought to ask. Not the obvious things, drugs, data, contraband, but something more intimate. Markets that traded in memories, in moments, in pieces of lives that should have been private, but somehow ended up for sale. My browser history showed the path I'd taken that night, though I couldn't remember following it. Forums discussing collectors who specialized in personal artifacts, photographs stolen from cloud storage, audio recordings from compromised devices, fragments of lives assembled into digital museums. Each collector had their own specialty, their own obsession. Some gathered childhood memories, others collected last words, final breaths, moments of profound loss or perfect joy. The payment confirmation email contained GPS coordinates, an abandoned storage facility on the edge of the city. The kind of place that rents units by the month and doesn't ask questions. Unit 431, the message said. The key would be waiting. I shouldn't have gone. Should have disputed the charge, changed my passwords, walked away. But curiosity is a treacherous thing when mixed with insomnia and the lingering effects of too many nights spent in digital darkness. The storage facility looked exactly as I'd expected. Concrete and steel growing rust like moss. Security cameras that hadn't worked in years. Numbered doors stretching into shadow. Unit 431 was at the end of a long hallway where the fluorescent lights flickered in patterns that felt almost meaningful. The key waited in an envelope taped to the door, along with a note. Your collection begins here. Inside, a single cardboard box sat in the center of the otherwise empty unit. No dust, no cobwebs, just clean concrete in that solitary container. The box contained photographs I recognized but hadn't taken. Moments from my own life, captured from angles that shouldn't have been possible. Me sleeping, eating, working, living. Each image tagged with metadata that catalogued every detail. Heart rate, body temperature, emotional state. Thoughts I remembered thinking in those frozen moments. But it was the timestamps that made my skin feel too tight. Some of the photos were dated years before they could have been taken. Others carried dates still weeks in the future. And some seemed to exist in temporal superposition, documenting moments that both had and hadn't happened yet. The collection grew over subsequent nights. Each morning I'd find new payments on my credit card, each one corresponding to another box in another storage unit. Each box contained more fragments of my life. Surveillance footage from cameras that didn't exist. Audio recordings of conversations I'd had alone in empty rooms. Detailed logs of intimate moments with my partner. I tried to stop it. Cancelled my cards. Changed my passwords. Reformatted my devices. But the charges continued, drawing from accounts I'd never opened. The boxes multiplied, spreading through the storage facility like a cancer of captured moments. My own memories began to feel unreliable, corrupted by the weight of all those documented moments. I found myself checking the boxes to remind myself what had really happened, what was yet to come, what might have been. The collection became a map of my existence, more real than my own recollections. Last night, I found a box containing nothing but mirrors. Each one showed my reflection at a different age, a different moment, a different possibility. In some, I looked exactly as I do now. In others, I was someone else entirely. All of them blinked when I didn't, moved when I was still. The final mirror showed only an empty room. Today's box waits in Unit 431, where it all began. The payment has already cleared, another £237.50 for another piece of myself I didn't know was for sale. The key sits heavy in my pocket, warm against my skin like a living thing. I know I should walk away. Know I should leave this place, these boxes, these collected moments that may or may not be mine. But the need to know is stronger than fear now. The need to understand what I've become in all these captured fragments of existence. The key slides into the lock. The door opens on well-oiled hinges. The box waits, patient as memory, heavy with the weight of moments yet to be lived. The security footage appeared in my drafts folder on a Tuesday afternoon. buried between promotional emails and forgotten conversations. Just a simple video file, no subject line, no sender. 47 seconds of grainy black and white, showing me making coffee in my kitchen that morning. The angle was unsettling. It was shot from above, from the corner where the cabinets met the ceiling, too high for any normal camera placement. My hands trembled slightly as I pressed play again, watching myself move through morning routines I thought were private. The way I always opened the cabinet with my left hand while reaching for a mug with my right. How I tapped the spoon exactly 3 times against the rim after stirring. Little unconscious habits I'd never noticed about myself, captured with unsettling precision. The coffee in my current mug had grown cold, untouched since I'd found the video. Outside my apartment windows, Chicago's autumn light painted geometric shadows across my desk, making me aware of how many angles, how many viewpoints, how many ways there were to observe a single moment. 3 weeks earlier, I had stumbled onto a forum, one of those late-night internet rabbit holes you don't remember falling into. It wasn't the dark web, at least not officially. Just a simple message board with no images, no avatars, just text. The posts were oddly specific. Threads titled things like Morning Routines, North America, and Solo Dining Habits, Asia Pacific. The discussions weren't about people in general. They were about individuals, specific ones. People described strangers' personal routines in disturbingly intricate detail. The way someone rubbed their thumb against their knuckles while reading. The exact sequence of someone's head movements as they fell asleep. Tiny, repetitive things. The kind of habits you don't even know you have. Then, more videos appeared in my drafts. Me reading on my couch, the angle capturing how I mouthed certain words without realizing it. Me working at my desk, showing how I ran my fingers along the edge of my keyboard, between thoughts. Me standing at my window at 3 a.m., watching the city's lights flicker like digital constellations. The timestamps became more recent, the angles more invasive. A shot from behind my couch, a clip from inside my closet, capturing me pulling my sweater off over my head. A video from just outside my shower curtain, showing my silhouette through the fogged glass. I changed my passwords, reformatted my devices, tore my apartment apart looking for hidden cameras. I found nothing. Then I checked the forum again. A new thread had appeared. It had my name as the title. I clicked. It was a collection of posts detailing my habits in third-person clinical precision. The way my left hand twitched before I reached for my phone. How my breathing changed when I wrote emails. How I muttered unfinished thoughts under my breath before deleting them. I kept scrolling. There were pages of it. Then I found a post that stopped me cold. It was written under a username I didn't recognize, but it described my evening routine, word for word. How I brushed my teeth, the way I paced my apartment before bed, the exact moment I turned off my lamp. It had been posted at 11:37 p.m. I checked the time on my phone. It was 11:42 p.m. Someone had written it as I was doing it. My breath caught. My hands shook as I clicked on the user's profile. It was locked. No details, no past posts, just the username. but it felt familiar. I switched tabs and checked my email, clicked the login page, typed in the username. My usual password worked. The forum welcomed me back. A message notification blinked at the top of the page. I hesitated before clicking it. It contained a single link. I followed it. A new video waited in my drafts folder. Time-stamped 1 minute ago. It showed me sitting at my desk, my back rigid, my head turning slowly toward the camera. I'm alone in the apartment. I know I am. But someone else is here, watching, recording, waiting. The missing persons report sits on my desk, crisp and clinical, a bureaucratic wound that refuses to heal. Case suspended pending new evidence. The words sit under Detective Rahman's signature, final and indifferent. 47 days. That's how long my brother's been gone. The police say he left on his own, walked away from his research, from his apartment cluttered with tangled cables and humming servers. But I've seen his search history. I know what he was looking for, and I know he wasn't the only one looking back. The official tech forensics report dismissed his computers as standard academic clutter, research papers, code snippets, cryptography notes, but they missed the gaps, the data voids, missing chunks of log files, unaccounted network activity at 2:17 a.m. every night, without fail. I'm not a detective. I manage IT infrastructure, make sure corporate servers don't collapse under traffic spikes. But I know enough to recognize when a system is being watched, and something was watching my brother. It started with a forum post, not the kind you find on Reddit, but buried in the parts of the internet that require invitation codes and encrypted keys. My brother had been researching surveillance, how governments track digital activity. But he found something else, a thread archived on his backup drive. The original post was short. Has anyone else been flagged for looking too closely? The replies ran deep. Cybersecurity analysts, network engineers, independent researchers, all describing the same phenomenon. Their traffic monitors were logging strange anomalies, connections they didn't initiate, network pings from masked addresses, bursts of outgoing data that weren't from them. And then, the disappearances. A university professor in Munich vanished. A freelance security analyst in Toronto, never heard from again. A software engineer in Tokyo, apartment left untouched, phone still charging on the nightstand. All names appearing in the same discussion thread. I don't believe in ghosts, but I believe in digital fingerprints, and someone was erasing them. I found a hidden folder in my brother's cloud drive, encrypted with a password only I would guess. Our childhood home phone number. Inside were network logs, unlike anything I've seen. Packets rerouted through dozens of proxies, but not by him. Connections terminating milliseconds before detection, like someone was scrubbing them in real time. A tracer route dead-ending into classified government servers. My brother's notes grew more erratic in the last 2 weeks before he vanished. He wrote about feeling watched, getting emails that disappeared from his inbox, receiving calls with no caller ID, just silence on the other end. The last file in the folder is a video. It's 40 seconds of his office, taken from his own webcam. Except, my brother never used his webcam. He kept it covered, paranoid about surveillance. The footage is still. His empty desk, the reflection of his monitor. And then, movement. Not in the room, but on the screen itself. A cursor dragging open a command prompt. A script executing. Then, static. The feed cuts to black. The final frame isn't an image. It's text. White on black. Stop digging. I checked the file's metadata. It wasn't saved by him. It was placed there remotely. My apartment feels smaller now. The screens around me, once just tools of my job, now feel like windows into something I shouldn't be seeing. My system logs are changing. Entries I didn't make. Connections I didn't establish. And then, an email. No subject line. No sender. Just a single line of text. We warned him. Consider this your only warning. I should stop. Wipe my drives. Get rid of everything. But that's not how this works. Because if I know this much, they already know I know. And I think I finally understand why my brother disappeared. Some people aren't meant to look too closely. Some questions don't have answers, only consequences. The air tastes different at 3 a.m. when you've spent too long staring at code. Stale coffee, nicotine, and something else. A kind of static tension that sits heavy in the back of your throat, like your body knows you've made a mistake before your brain catches up. It started small, just another night trawling through underground forums, picking apart databases, searching for vulnerabilities like a scavenger, hunting for rusted treasure. I'm good at what I do. Not a script kiddie, not some keyboard warrior running pre-built exploits. I know how to take things apart, how to slip between security layers unnoticed, but no one is ever really invisible online. I found his name buried deep in a forgotten paste bin, an alias attached to a post that shouldn't have been there. Just a simple list of breached credentials, old enough that most of them were useless. But the email at the top, an anonymous Proton mail address, felt out of place. I'd seen it before. It belonged to someone who didn't belong in those spaces. Curiosity got the better of me. I ran a few checks, followed the breadcrumbs through VPN logs and proxy chains. Every route led to a dead end, a carefully scrubbed presence. That was my first warning sign. I should have left it alone. By the time I noticed the back door, it was too late. The first sign was small. My mouse stuttered across the screen like it had a mind of its own. A fraction of a second delay that only someone obsessive would notice. Then, my webcam indicator blinked, just once. A flicker so fast, I almost convinced myself it was a glitch. Then the messages started. They weren't emails, not texts, not anything that could be easily traced. Instead, they appeared in places they shouldn't. Drafts in my own email account, notes inside my password manager, unsent messages lurking in my clipboard history. You shouldn't have looked. A joke, maybe. Someone screwing with me. I checked my logs, ran deep scans, wiped my system clean. But no matter what I did, the messages came back. I see you. I stopped sleeping. Paranoia settled in like an old friend. I ripped the battery from my laptop, swapped my phone for a burner, even started using an air gap machine just to be safe. None of it mattered. He had me. The first demand was simple. A test. Drop an old database dump into a hidden forum. Something he could monetize. Easy. I refused. The next message was different. A screenshot. My bedroom. Me sitting at my desk, eyes sunken, skin washed out in the pale glow of my monitor. The angle was impossible. My webcam was covered, my phone face down. I checked everything. No malware, no remote access logs, nothing that explained how he was inside my life. But the proof was there, staring back at me. The next message was an address. My address. Now you understand, a new message read. I caved. I did what he wanted. Posted what he asked. Covered my tracks as best I could. But compliance only fed the fire. Each demand escalated. Bank credentials. Insider information. A name I didn't recognize. But one that I knew was important to someone. I wanted to run. Smash my drives. Burn every connection. Disappear. But then came the final message. The one that made my stomach drop. That turned my fear into something cold and absolute. A video file. It was only a few seconds long, but I knew the street, knew the house, knew the person walking up the driveway. It was my sister Claire. I watched, helpless, as she pulled her keys from her bag, oblivious to the figure waiting just out of frame. The video cut out before anything happened, but the message beneath it was clear. You don't get to stop. I'm writing this now, knowing full well he's watching, that he'll see these words the moment I type them. Maybe that's the point. Maybe he wants me to understand that there's nothing I can do, no move I can make, that he hasn't already anticipated. I don't know how this ends, but I know one thing. I was never the predator. I was always the prey. Just a plain white screen with an error message. 404, page not found. It was gone, like it had never existed. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old wooden floorboards sent a jolt through me. The hum of the fridge in the next room felt ominous, like it was hiding something beneath its steady drone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until dawn, too afraid to close my eyes. The next morning, I checked the closet. I stood there for what felt like forever, before finally gripping the handle and pulling it open. Just clothes, rows of neatly hung shirts, a few pairs of shoes, and the usual assortment of boxes stacked haphazardly at the bottom. Nothing out of place, but something felt off. It wasn't what I saw, it was what I felt. As if something had been there, I closed the door quickly, but the feeling lingered. A crawling unease settling under my skin. Opened the door. The air was still, stale even, and I swore I could smell something faint, like damp wood and old paper. I closed the door quickly, but the feeling lingered. A crawling unease settling under my skin. Then last night my phone buzzed. I was lying on the sofa, trying to lose myself in mindless TV, when the notification came through. The sender was an unfamiliar address. The subject line simple and direct. You need to look. My stomach turned and my hands felt numb as I tapped it open. The email contained a single attachment. a photo of my closet door. It was slightly more open than before, just a crack wider, but enough to notice. My pulse thumped in my ears. I closed the email, deleted it, and turned my phone off, tossing it across the room like it might bite me. Later, as I lay in bed, trying to convince myself it was just a prank, I heard it. A faint rustling sound, subtle but unmistakable, like something shifting across the floorboards inside the closet. My heart pounded against my ribs, and I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling the covers up over my head like a child. I told myself it was nothing, just the old building settling, or maybe a stray draft, but I couldn't bring myself to look. When I finally worked up the courage in the morning, I found the closet door wide open. I haven't touched my laptop since, but the messages keep coming. Every day, a new email, each one more intrusive than the last. They mention things no one should know, details too personal, too precise, places I've been, thoughts I've had in moments of solitude, things I've done when no one was watching. Today a voicemail arrived from an unknown number. When I played it, it was mostly static, but beneath the crackling noise, there was something else. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing, heavy and drawn out. I deleted it immediately, but my phone rang again almost as soon as I pressed delete. The same number. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and left the flat, hoping that a walk outside might clear my head. But the feeling followed me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and no matter how much I told myself it was paranoia, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. Every reflection in the shop window, every glance over my shoulder, I expected to see someone standing there, just out of sight. When I got back, a single sheet of paper had been slid under my door. No message. Just a smudged handprint, too large to be mine. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, but then the whispers started. They didn't come from my phone or my laptop, but from inside the walls. Low murmurs, barely audible, creeping through the plaster. I pressed my ear against the wall, straining to make sense of the words, but every time I tried to focus, they stopped. I tried recording the sound on my phone, but when I played it back, there was nothing but silence. The next morning, another piece of paper was under my door. This time, it had writing on it. It had my name, written in my own handwriting. I packed a bag and left, booking a motel across town. I thought putting distance between me and the flat would help, but the emails followed me, blank messages with timestamps marking the exact moment I opened the last one. Then came the photos, pictures of my motel door from the hallway. I checked outside, but the corridor was empty. Last night, I blocked the email, turned off my phone, and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Soft at first, then louder. I sat frozen in bed, watching the handle slowly begin to turn. It rattled gently against the lock. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could barely breathe. The lock held, but I didn't sleep after that. This morning, I checked out and went home. I wanted to believe it was over, that maybe I'd just been imagining things. But the air inside felt wrong, heavy, cold, almost suffocating. And when I stepped into my bedroom, my stomach dropped. The closet door was open again. Inside, something I hadn't seen in years. an old stuffed toy from my childhood, its head tilted to the side, button eyes staring at me, unblinking. I felt sick. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. The messages, the whispers, the feeling that I'm never really alone. It's getting worse. And tonight, as I sit here writing this, I hear footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate, stopping just outside my door. I don't think I locked it this time. Sarah, it's me, Ben. You need to call me back right now. Something's wrong, really wrong. I saw you at the mall today, but you were with someone else. It was you, but it wasn't. Please call me back. The message ended abruptly, leaving Sarah staring at her phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't been to the mall today. In fact, she hadn't left her apartment all day, glued to her computer, working on a critical project for her cybersecurity firm. A chilling wave of unease washed over her. Ben wasn't the type to prank her, and his voice had been laced with genuine fear. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Sarah, a seasoned cybersecurity expert, immediately dove into her online accounts, checking for any suspicious activity. Her email, social media, and banking accounts all appeared normal. But as she delved deeper, a sense of dread began to creep in. On a lesser-known social media platform, she discovered a profile that mirrored her own. The profile picture was an image of her, albeit slightly altered. The smile a little too wide, the eyes a little too bright. The posts were eerily similar to her own, mimicking her writing style and interests, but with a subtle, unsettling twist. Sarah's blood ran cold. Someone had stolen her identity, crafted a digital doppelganger that was living her life online. But who would do such a thing, and why? As she investigated further, she uncovered a trail of digital breadcrumbs leading to the dark web, a hidden realm of anonymity and illicit activities. She discovered a hidden forum where users boasted of stealing identities, creating digital puppets to manipulate and exploit. Sarah realized that she wasn't just dealing with a simple case of identity theft. This was something far more sinister, a violation that transcended the digital realm and threatened to invade her real life. The tension mounted as Sarah delved deeper into the dark web, uncovering a network of individuals who specialized in creating and manipulating digital identities. They called themselves the puppeteers, and they took pride in their ability to control and exploit their victims. Sarah became obsessed with unmasking the puppeteer who had stolen her identity, determined to reclaim her life and expose their operation. But as she ventured further into the dark web's labyrinthine depths, she realized that she was not just hunting them, they were hunting her. The puppeteer, it seemed, was not content with merely existing in the digital realm. They wanted to cross over into the real world, to replace Sarah entirely. They began to manipulate her life, sending messages to her friends and family, impersonating her at work, even showing up at her apartment building. Sarah found herself trapped in a terrifying game of cat and mouse. Her life turned upside down, her sense of reality shattered. She had to fight back, to outsmart the puppeteer, to reclaim her identity before it was too late. The climax was a heart-pounding confrontation, a clash between Sarah and her digital doppelganger. The puppeteer, masked and shrouded in darkness, invaded her apartment, their physical appearance eerily similar to her own, their movements and mannerisms a chilling imitation. But Sarah, armed with her expertise and her own fierce determination, fought back. She used her knowledge of technology to expose the puppeteer's true identity, to disrupt their operation, and to finally reclaim her life. In the aftermath, Sarah emerged victorious, her identity restored, her life reclaimed. But the experience had left its mark, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows of the internet, a testament to the fragility of identity in a world where the digital and the real were increasingly intertwined. Sarah knew that the puppeteers were still out there, lurking in the depths of the dark web, waiting for their next victim. But she also knew that she was ready for them, armed with the knowledge and the strength to protect herself and others from their insidious manipulations. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, a guardian of identity in a world where the lines between the real and the virtual were becoming increasingly blurred. I never thought I'd find myself diving into the dark corners of the internet, but like most of you, I got tired of the same old thing. Social media felt fake, perfect photos, staged moments, nothing real. I'm sure you've scrolled through your feed and thought, is anyone actually happy? Or are we all just pretending? I wanted something different, something real. That's how I ended up on the Sanctum. It started like any other night, sitting in my room, the soft hum of my computer filling the silence. I'd been down internet rabbit holes before. We all have, right? 1 minute you're watching a video about weird facts, and the next, you're 5 pages deep in a thread about secret societies. That night I found an obscure forum link buried in some random discussion. It looked sketchy, but curiosity got the better of me. The Sanctum. The name alone got me interested. The site itself was simple, almost empty, but it had this weird vibe, like it was watching you as much as you were watching it. They called it a place for people who felt lost, a spot where folks could be themselves without being judged. And honestly, I needed that, so I signed up, picking the username The Seeker, because, well, that's what I was, always looking for something more than the usual daily grind. At first, I just lurked, reading through the posts. It wasn't like the usual junk you see online. People talked about deep stuff, philosophy, technology, politics, but not in that fake show-off way you see everywhere else. These were honest, sometimes tough conversations. Hackers, artists, activists, everyday people, all coming together in one place, sharing their thoughts without filters. It felt real. I started posting little things, a few thoughts here and there, some of my music, a poem I never had the guts to share anywhere else, and people responded, not with likes or emojis, but real feedback, encouragement, honest opinions. It felt good to finally belong somewhere. But the Sanctum wasn't just a forum. It was more than that. A place where being anonymous could be a good thing, or a really bad thing, depending on how you used it. Everyone had a secret, I'm sure you do too. And when a thread appeared titled, "What is the price of truth?" it felt like bait on a hook. The oracle, the person who started it, challenged everyone to share their darkest secret in exchange for a truth that could change everything. I wasn't sure. I mean, who would be? We all have things we'd rather keep hidden. But I couldn't resist. Eventually, I gave in. I typed out something I'd never told anyone. Something from my childhood that still haunted me, that shaped who I was in ways I didn't like to admit. I hit submit, and for a second, it felt like a weight had lifted. But then, the replies started coming in. People shared everything. Affairs, crimes, fears, regrets. It was overwhelming. Some secrets were harmless, like embarrassing stories from years ago. But others, they were dark, really dark, the kind of stuff that sticks with you. And then, the oracle responded. You have shared your truths. Now, it is my turn. A link appeared. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. It led to a hidden site filled with weird files, creepy pictures, and strange messages. It was like peeling back a layer of the world I never knew existed. Conspiracies, secret plans, things that made me question everything. The more I read, the more trapped I felt, like the walls of my world were closing in. And that's when I realized something scary. The oracle wasn't just sharing information. They were watching us, using us. Our secrets were their leverage, and suddenly, the sanctum didn't feel so safe anymore. I wasn't alone though. A few others started seeing the same patterns, feeling the same worry. We formed a small group, trying to figure out who the oracle really was, what they wanted, what we found. It wasn't just one person. It was a group, powerful people, using the forum to control us, to push their own plans. We fought back, exposing them from the inside, breaking their grip, but it came at a cost. Friendships were ruined, trust was broken. Some people just disappeared, their accounts wiped like they never existed. I barely made it out myself. Now, when I look back, I wonder if it was worth it. The truth, as freeing as it was, came with a heavy price. But I learned something important. The internet is a dark place, and being anonymous isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it's a trap. So if you ever find yourself lurking in places you shouldn't, asking questions you might not want the answers to, be careful, because once you see the truth, there's no going back. Winter light cuts through my apartment in pale, uneven strips. I haven't slept in days. Maybe 3, maybe more. My body has stopped reminding me, and the clock doesn't feel real anymore. Time is measured by the quiet hum of my monitor, the changing angle of the light, the moments my heart slows when I forget to blink. I tell myself I can stop any time. Just close the laptop, walk away. But I don't. It started with a link, a plain, anonymous drop in a forum thread I barely remember visiting. No description, no explanation, just a string of letters and numbers, an invitation to click. The URL wasn't indexed, and it had no traceable host. It shouldn't have led anywhere, but it did. A live stream. The screen was grainy, low res, but the setup was clear. A dimly lit basement or warehouse, concrete walls, exposed pipes, a single chair in the center of the frame, with a woman sat in it. Her posture was strange, too still, too upright, like she had been placed there rather than seated herself. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers curled loosely. Blonde hair, average build, early 30s maybe. Her face was turned slightly away from the camera, but I could see enough. She wasn't blinking. Around her stood 5 figures, evenly spaced, their bodies positioned with eerie precision. They wore masks, cheap, expressionless white plastic, the kind you find in discount shops around Halloween. There was no sound. For the first hour I thought it was a still image, a staged, looping feed meant to bait people like me, insomniacs and digital voyeurs, scrolling endlessly through the internet's forgotten corners. But then, in the second hour, the woman shifted. Not much, just the subtlest motion of her right hand, fingers curling and uncurling once before going still again. It was enough to make my stomach drop. I typed in the chat. Who is she? No response. The viewer count sat at 27. No usernames, no messages, just a silent audience. I tried again. Is this live? Still nothing. The woman moved again, her head tilting slightly toward the camera. Not enough to see her eyes, but enough to suggest she was aware. The masked figures remained still. The longer I watched, the more I noticed things. The way the lighting seemed to shift subtly, like an unseen hand was adjusting it. The occasional flicker in the video feed, as if something was interfering with the signal. The sense that the masked figures weren't statues, but they weren't quite people either. 2 hours in, the viewer count jumped to 41. No one typed. 3 hours in, the woman moved again. Her breath hitched, shoulders rising ever so slightly. It was the first real sign of life, and it made my skin go cold. She was aware. She was awake. She was waiting for something, or someone. I should have stopped. I should have clicked away. Let the stream vanish into the depths of the internet like every other strange link I'd chased before. But I kept watching. The 4th hour brought sound. Not a voice, not movement, just a low, steady hum, like an old television left on a dead channel. It buzzed at the edge of perception, making my teeth ache. The chat flickered. A single message appeared. Do not look away. I swallowed, fingers hovering over my keyboard, unsure if I should respond. The masked figures hadn't moved, but something was different now. I could feel it. In the 5th hour, the woman raised her head. Not much, just enough to reveal her mouth. It was open slightly, lips parted, as if she were about to speak, but she didn't. Her hands clenched in her lap, her shoulders tensed. And then, finally, one of the masked figures moved. Not much, just a slight shift of weight, a near imperceptible adjustment, like a man holding a pose for too long, and finally allowing himself a breath. But it was enough to make my heart pound. Another message appeared in the chat. She knows you're watching. My mouse hovered over the tab, ready to close it, but I hesitated. Why? Why did I hesitate? The 6th hour passed in silence. The masked figures stood, frozen again. The woman barely moved. My laptop fan hummed, the only sound in the room apart from my own breathing. At the 7-hour mark, the stream cut to black. No warning, no fade out, just gone. The chat remained for a few seconds, flickering at the edges of the screen, as if the website itself hadn't realized the feed had ended. A final message appeared. You stayed too long. The tab closed itself. My screen flickered. returning me to my desktop. My hands were stiff, fingers aching from where I had gripped the edge of my desk without realizing it. I checked the forum thread where I had found the link. It was gone. No record of the post. No trace in my browser history. Like it had never existed. But I know what I saw. I still don't sleep much. Not because I'm afraid. Not exactly. It's just that sometimes, in the still hours of the night, when my screen is dark and my apartment is silent, I swear I can feel something just beyond the edges of my perception. Like a camera. Like an audience. Like someone somewhere is watching me, just as I once watched her. I never thought I'd find myself diving into the dark corners of the internet, but like most of you, I got tired of the same old thing. Social media felt fake, perfect photos, staged moments, nothing real. I'm sure you've scrolled through your feed and thought, is anyone actually happy? Or are we all just pretending? I wanted something different, something real. That's how I ended up on the Sanctum. It started like any other night, sitting in my room, the soft hum of my computer filling the silence. I'd been down internet rabbit holes before. We all have, right? 1 minute you're watching a video about weird facts, and the next, you're 5 pages deep in a thread about secret societies. That night I found an obscure forum link buried in some random discussion. It looked sketchy, but curiosity got the better of me. The Sanctum. The name alone got me interested. The site itself was simple, almost empty, but it had this weird vibe, like it was watching you as much as you were watching it. They called it a place for people who felt lost, a spot where folks could be themselves without being judged. And honestly, I needed that, so I signed up, picking the username The Seeker, because, well, that's what I was. Always looking for something more than the usual daily grind. At first, I just lurked, reading through the posts. It wasn't like the usual junk you see online. People talked about deep stuff, philosophy, technology, politics, but not in that fake show-off way you see everywhere else. These were honest, sometimes tough conversations. Hackers, artists, activists, everyday people, all coming together in one place, sharing their thoughts without filters. It felt real. I started posting little things, a few thoughts here and there, some of my music, a poem I never had the guts to share anywhere else, and people responded, not with likes or emojis, but real feedback, encouragement, honest opinions. It felt good to finally belong somewhere. But the Sanctum wasn't just a forum. It was more than that. A place where being anonymous could be a good thing, or a really bad thing, depending on how you used it. Everyone had a secret. I'm sure you do too. And when a thread appeared titled, "What is the price of truth?" it felt like bait on a hook. The Oracle, the person who started it, challenged everyone to share their darkest secret, in exchange for a truth that could change everything. I wasn't sure. I mean, who would be? We all have things we'd rather keep hidden. But I couldn't resist. Eventually, I gave in. I typed out something I'd never told anyone. Something from my childhood that still haunted me, that shaped who I was, in ways I didn't like to admit. I hit submit, and for a second, it felt like a weight had lifted. But then, the replies started coming in. People shared everything: affairs, crimes, fears, regrets. It was overwhelming. Some secrets were harmless, like embarrassing stories from years ago. But others, they were dark, really dark, the kind of stuff that sticks with you. And then the oracle responded. You have shared your truths. Now it is my turn. A link appeared. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. It led to a hidden site filled with weird files, creepy pictures, and strange messages. It was like peeling back a layer of the world I never knew existed. Conspiracies, secret plans, things that made me question everything. The more I read, the more trapped I felt, like the walls of my world were closing in. And that's when I realized something scary. The oracle wasn't just sharing information. They were watching us, using us. Our secrets were their leverage, and suddenly, the sanctum didn't feel so safe anymore. I wasn't alone, though. A few others started seeing the same patterns, feeling the same worry. We formed a small group, trying to figure out who the oracle really was, what they wanted, what we found. It wasn't just one person. It was a group, powerful people, using the forum to control us, to push their own plans. We fought back, exposing them from the inside, breaking their grip. But it came at a cost. Friendships were ruined. Trust was broken. Some people just disappeared, their accounts wiped like they never existed. I barely made it out myself. Now, when I look back, I wonder if it was worth it. The truth, as freeing as it was, came with a heavy price. But I learned something important. The internet is a dark place, and being anonymous isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it's a trap. So if you ever find yourself lurking in places you shouldn't, asking questions you might not want the answers to, be careful, because once you see the truth, there's no going back. I always tend to find myself staying up way too late, clicking through random websites and finding weird stuff. That's how I ended up on a dark website that tracked people's sleep habits. It seemed pretty harmless at first, just a bunch of people sharing their sleep data. But hidden deep in the forums, I found people talking about something called the missing hours. Some people said they would go to sleep and wake up feeling like they had lost time, but not in the usual way. They swore whole parts of their lives were just missing. A few even shared screenshots of their phone calendars showing events they didn't remember going to, or messages they never wrote. At first, I thought it was just made-up nonsense, but I started paying more attention to my own sleep. I put my phone by my bed and set up a camera to record myself overnight. The first few nights, everything seemed normal. But then, I noticed something weird. There were gaps in the footage, a few minutes missing here and there, like someone had cut parts out. One morning, I woke up with dirt under my fingernails and my legs, feeling sore, like I'd been running all night. The scariest part was when I checked my phone. There were new contacts I didn't recognize, with numbers that didn't match anything real. I tried calling one of them, but the line went dead after a single ring. Then I started getting weird texts, random words, phrases, and times. It felt like someone was trying to send me a message, or maybe a warning. After that, I tried to stay awake as much as possible. But even when I thought I was awake, I'd still lose time. I'd be sitting on the couch watching TV, and suddenly it would be morning, and I'd be in a completely different spot in my apartment. I don't know if it's the dark web messing with me, or if something else is happening. Either way, I don't feel like myself anymore. Then I started noticing strange things in my apartment. My keys would show up in places I never put them. My shoes would be muddy, even though I hadn't gone outside. Sometimes, when I looked in the mirror, my reflection seemed off, just for a second, like it wasn't really me looking back. The lack of sleep was making me feel crazy. I left the lights on at night, kept the TV running, but nothing helped. I even had a friend stay over, but that didn't stop it. One morning, I woke up on the floor with bruises all over my arms, and my friend was gone. When I called him, he swore he never came over in the first place. I checked my camera footage again, and this time, it was even worse. There were longer gaps. In some parts of the recording, I wasn't even in my bed anymore. Then I found a video I don't remember recording. It showed me standing in my living room, staring at the camera with a blank face, whispering something. When I turned up the volume, I could only just hear the words, "Don't look for me." I don't remember saying that, but it was definitely my voice. That dark website I found. It's gone now. I tried finding it again, but it's like it never existed. And no matter what I do, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. Every night, it feels like something is counting down to something I don't want to know. Now, I keep waking up in different places, sometimes even miles from my apartment. My car has been parked in places I never go to, and once I woke up on a park bench with my phone wiped clean. My bank account shows tiny purchases I didn't make. Little things, barely noticeable, but enough to make me wonder who's using my life when I'm not. I'm getting really paranoid. I started taping my doors shut before bed, marking my tires with chalk, and setting up motion sensors in my apartment. But every morning, they're disturbed. Someone, or something, is moving around while I sleep. A few nights ago, I found a note under my door. It was written in my handwriting and just said, "Stop looking." But I don't remember writing it. I don't even own any paper. I don't think I'll ever figure out the truth. Maybe I shouldn't even try. But every time I close my eyes, I wonder if I'll wake up at all, or if I'll just disappear completely. You know how people always say, curiosity killed the cat? Well, I came way too close to proving that true, thanks to the hidden wiki and my own need to know everything. It started out innocent enough. I was deep in a Reddit rabbit hole, like most of you have probably been at some point, jumping from link to link when I stumbled across a mention of the hidden wiki. I'd always known the dark web was out there, but I figured it was just shady drug deals and weird conspiracy stuff. But the hidden wiki, that sounded different. A secret directory of websites, a gateway to the internet's underbelly. How could I resist? So, like any self-respecting internet junkie, I fired up Tor, feeling like some kind of cyber detective, and dove right in. The hidden wiki was like stepping into another dimension. It was chaotic, a maze of links leading to everything from hacking guides to conspiracy theories, to things I can't even put into words. Some sites were funny, in a dark, twisted way, while others made my stomach churn and my skin crawl. But mixed in with all the weirdness, there was something else, a thrill. The excitement of exploring the unknown, of pushing boundaries and seeing things most people never would. Hours passed as I clicked through pages, finding forums discussing bizarre philosophies, chat rooms where people shared their darkest secrets, and websites claiming to unlock hidden dimensions. And then I found it. Tucked away in some obscure corner of the wiki was a link labeled The Gateway. No description, no details, just a name that felt like it was daring me to click. I hesitated, hovering over it. That little voice in the back of my head told me to close the browser and move on. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I'm sure you felt it too, the pull to see what's behind the door, even when you know you shouldn't. So, I clicked. The site took forever to load, and when it did, I almost wished it hadn't. The screen flickered with static and distorted images, twisting into colors that didn't make sense. Text appeared and disappeared in broken fragments, flickering like it was alive. The images were the worst. Figures with warped faces, landscapes that looked like they were melting. It felt wrong, like I was looking at something I was never meant to see. And the sound. It wasn't just noise. It was whispers, groans, something deep and unsettling, like it was coming from inside my own head. I wanted to close it, to turn it off and walk away, but I couldn't. It was like my hand wouldn't move. I kept clicking through page after page, each one worse than the last. Images of things I don't even want to describe. Stories of people who had found the site and how their lives had fallen apart afterward. Accounts of people going missing, losing their minds, or worse. Then I saw the video. It was low quality and grainy, but it was real. A young woman, eyes wide with terror, being dragged into the shadows by something I couldn't quite make out. The screen went black, and a message popped up in plain white text. "You're next." I slammed my laptop shut and just sat there, frozen. My heart was racing, and I could swear the room felt colder. Every shadow seemed darker, every creak in my apartment louder. I ripped the power cord out of the wall, shut everything down, and tried to convince myself it was all just some elaborate hoax. But the fear wouldn't go away. It was in my bones, this overwhelming sense that something was watching me. For the next few days, I couldn't shake it. I jumped at every sound. Every unexpected notification on my phone sent my pulse racing. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message, that woman. I tried telling myself it was just a prank site meant to scare people like me, but deep down, I knew better. I stayed off the dark web after that. I deleted Tor, wiped my history, and tried to pretend none of it ever happened. But even now, I feel it lingering. Late at night, when everything's quiet, I swear I can still hear those whispers. I never talk about it. Not really. People wouldn't believe me. And honestly, I wouldn't blame them. But if you ever come across something called The Gateway, do yourself a favor. Don't click it. It started with an email. Just a plain, unassuming email. The kind that usually gets lost in the sea of promotions and newsletters clogging up an inbox. But this one was different. the subject line stood out from the rest. At first, it seemed like spam, the typical phishing attempt designed to scare someone into clicking a malicious link. Like most of you, I've seen enough of those to know better, but something about it felt off. Maybe it was the timing, arriving at 3 a.m. when everything was still and the mind was most vulnerable. Or maybe it was that nagging curiosity, the kind that compels people to peek behind curtains they probably shouldn't. Whatever it was, curiosity won. The message was brief but unsettling. It listed specific details, things no one else should have known, childhood memories buried deep, an old nickname used by siblings, the name of a first pet, an embarrassing moment long forgotten. I'm sure you've had those moments, little things you thought no one remembered. It felt like someone had been inside a private diary, except no diary had been kept in years. Panic set in. Passwords were changed. Every account locked down with complex combinations barely memorable. Virus scans ran through the computer, searching for hidden threats. Online activity logs were scrutinized. Every recent login inspected for suspicious activity, but nothing. Everything seemed normal. Bank accounts were untouched. Social media remained undisturbed, and emails showed no signs of interference. Still, the feeling of exposure lingered, like something was lurking just out of sight. Then the messages started appearing in the most unexpected places. Anonymous posts on forgotten forums, random comments on barely used social media accounts, even tucked away in the comments section of an old blog, short, cryptic reminders that someone was watching. The unease grew stronger with every passing day. Paranoia crept in, shadows at the edge of vision, fleeting shapes in the dark. Nighttime brought whispers, faint, almost inaudible, yet persistent enough to disrupt sleep. Social media accounts were deleted, online presence reduced to the bare minimum. Disconnecting entirely from the digital world seemed tempting, but not realistic. Life had become too intertwined with it. Days blurred together, each one filled with an ever-present sense of dread. Normal activities felt strained. Conversations with friends seemed forced, and the weight of constantly looking over a shoulder became exhausting. The need for answers grew stronger, leading to deep dives into cybersecurity forums, researching cases of similar incidents, and questioning every unfamiliar face seen in public. It became an obsession. Late one night, unable to sleep, a message arrived on my phone. Unlike the others, it was a text sent to a personal number, known only by a few. It contained a link. Clicking it led to a dark web forum, a place never seen before. The forum was dedicated to blackmail, stolen data, compromised secrets, and personal information turned into currency. At the top of the page, one thread stood out. An auction, selling off every private detail, laid bare for anonymous bidders. Old fears, private confessions, vulnerabilities, things meant to stay hidden forever, were now a spectacle for strangers. There was no way to make it stop. Everything had been stripped away, leaving behind only helplessness. Then, buried among the chaos of the forum, a hidden message appeared. A user claimed to have the skills to dismantle it from within. Trusting an unknown figure felt like a risk, but with nothing left to lose. Screenshots, usernames, and any useful data were shared. The counterattack began. Misinformation flooded the forum, confusion spread among the bidders, and panic set in among the organizers. Slowly, The structure that had once seemed impenetrable started to fall apart. The forum collapsed. Users scattered, and the organizers were exposed. Law enforcement was provided with everything needed to dismantle what remained. The thriving marketplace of secrets turned into a ghost town overnight. The relief that followed was fleeting. Though the threat was gone, the paranoia never truly disappeared. The experience had left something behind, a constant awareness of just how fragile privacy had become in the digital world. The figure who had helped vanished without a trace. No explanation, no follow-up. Whoever they were, their motives remained a mystery. Even now, with everything seemingly back to normal, a lingering unease remains. The digital world no longer feels like a safe place. There's always that lingering thought that someone, somewhere, is still watching, waiting for another opportunity to slip through the cracks. Every now and then, a glance at the phone or a random comment on an old post reignites the fear. The question remains, was it really over, or just waiting to start again? I've always had a habit of staying up too late, diving into the depths of the internet. It's not just mindless scrolling. I like the weird corners, the forgotten forums, the abandoned websites. There's something fascinating about stumbling onto things that feel hidden. Like I'm peeling back. The internet, with all its strange little pockets, offers a kind of escape. Maybe it's because my life has always felt a little ordinary. Same routine, same job, same quiet flat. The internet, with all its strange little pockets, offers a kind of escape. A few weeks ago, I found something I shouldn't have. It started with an old, glitchy website, buried deep in a tech forum thread. Someone called it a collection of forgotten knowledge, but most people in the comments dismissed it as a hoax. The link was still active, though. So, against my better judgment, I clicked. The page loaded painfully slow, like it was reluctant to reveal itself. At first, just a blank screen. Then, after a few seconds, a single line of text appeared. "Welcome guest. Are you ready to see what they erased?" Curious, I scrolled down. A list of topics filled the screen, each more unsettling than the last. Faces that shouldn't exist. The numbers that watch you. Sounds from empty places. One title caught my eye. The missing time. I clicked. The page opened to a dense article about an experiment tracking lost hours in people's daily lives. Stories of people zoning out, convinced hours had vanished without explanation. I found it oddly fascinating. Then, more text appeared at the bottom of the page. "You lost time reading this. Check the clock." I glanced at the time. Nearly 4 a.m., but it felt like I had just started reading. A cold unease crept over me. When I went back to the homepage, the topics had changed. Now they were personal. Your last phone call. What watches you sleep. The thing in your closet. My stomach knotted. I clicked on the last one. A grainy black and white video started playing. My room, my bed, my desk, the closet door slightly ajar. I wasn't in the frame, but something else was. A shadow moved in the darkness, slow and deliberate. It felt intentional, like it knew I was watching. I slammed my laptop shut and sat there, heart hammering in my chest. My breathing was ragged. and my hands felt clammy against the cool metal of the laptop. I sat in the silence, staring at the dark screen, my mind racing. Had I really just seen that? The shadow, its movement was too deliberate, too knowing. A part of me wanted to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. Maybe some kind of pre-recorded footage designed to scare curious visitors. But deep down, I knew better. I waited a few minutes, forcing myself to breathe, to calm the shaking in my legs. Finally, with trembling fingers, I opened the laptop again, the browser refreshed, the site reloading slower than before, agonizingly slow. And then, nothing. The site reloading slower than before, agonizingly slow. And then, nothing. Just a plain white screen with an error message. 404, page not found. It was gone, like it had never existed. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the old wooden floorboards sent a jolt through me. The hum of the fridge in the next room felt ominous, like it was hiding something beneath its steady drone. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until dawn, too afraid to close my eyes. The next morning, I checked the closet. I stood there for what felt like forever, before finally gripping the handle and pulling it open. Just clothes, rows of neatly hung shirts, a few pairs of shoes, and the usual assortment of boxes stacked haphazardly at the bottom. Nothing out of place, but something felt off. It wasn't what I saw, it was what I felt. As if something had been there, I closed the door quickly, but the feeling lingered, a crawling unease settling under my skin. Opened the door. The air was still, stale even, and I swore I could smell something faint, like damp wood and old paper. I closed the door quickly, but the feeling lingered, a crawling unease settling under my skin. Then last night my phone buzzed. I was lying on the sofa, trying to lose myself in mindless TV, when the notification came through. The sender was an unfamiliar address, the subject line simple and direct. You need to look. My stomach turned and my hands felt numb as I tapped it open. The email contained a single attachment, a photo of my closet door. It was slightly more open than before, just a crack wider, but enough to notice. My pulse thumped in my ears. I closed the email, deleted it, and turned my phone off, tossing it across the room like it might bite me. Later, as I lay in bed, trying to convince myself it was just a prank, I heard it. A faint rustling sound, subtle but unmistakable, like something shifting across the floorboards inside the closet. My heart pounded against my ribs, and I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling the covers up over my head like a child. I told myself it was nothing, just the old building settling, or maybe a stray draft, but I couldn't bring myself to look. When I finally worked up the courage in the morning, I found the closet door wide open. I haven't touched my laptop since, but the messages keep coming. Every day, a new email, each one more intrusive than the last. They mention things no one should know, details too personal, too precise, places I've been, thoughts I've had in moments of solitude, things I've done when no one was watching. Today a voicemail arrived from an unknown number. When I played it, it was mostly static, but beneath the crackling noise, there was something else. Breathing. Slow, deliberate breathing, heavy and drawn out. I deleted it immediately, but my phone rang again almost as soon as I pressed delete. The same number. I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and left the flat, hoping that a walk outside might clear my head. But the feeling followed me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and no matter how much I told myself it was paranoia, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. Every reflection in the shop window, every glance over my shoulder, I expected to see someone standing there, just out of sight. When I got back, a single sheet of paper had been slid under my door. No message. Just a smudged handprint, too large to be mine. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, but then the whispers started. They didn't come from my phone or my laptop, but from inside the walls. Low murmurs, barely audible, creeping through the plaster. I pressed my ear against the wall, straining to make sense of the words, but every time I tried to focus, they stopped. I tried recording the sound on my phone, but when I played it back, there was nothing but silence. The next morning, another piece of paper was under my door. This time, it had writing on it. It had my name, written in my own handwriting. I packed a bag and left, booking a motel across town. I thought putting distance between me and the flat would help, but the emails followed me, blank messages with timestamps marking the exact moment I opened the last one. Then came the photos, pictures of my motel door from the hallway. I checked outside, but the corridor was empty. Last night, I blocked the email, turned off my phone, and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Soft at first, then louder. I sat frozen in bed, watching the handle slowly begin to turn. It rattled gently against the lock. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could barely breathe. The lock held, but I didn't sleep after that. This morning, I checked out and went home. I wanted to believe it was over, that maybe I'd just been imagining things. But the air inside felt wrong, heavy, cold, almost suffocating. And when I stepped into my bedroom, my stomach dropped. The closet door was open again. Inside, something I hadn't seen in years. An old stuffed toy from my childhood, its head tilted to the side, button eyes staring at me, unblinking. I felt sick. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. The messages, the whispers, the feeling that I'm never really alone. It's getting worse. And tonight, as I sit here writing this, I hear footsteps in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate, stopping just outside my door. I don't think I locked it this time. I never used to be the kind of person who got spooked easily. Growing up, I was always the one telling ghost stories at sleepovers, laughing when my friends shrieked at the creaks and groans of an old house settling. Technology fascinated me. I spent hours in front of my computer, diving deep into forums, late-night conspiracy threads, and obscure websites that most people wouldn't dare click on. It was a hobby, a way to pass the long, lonely nights after my parents passed away. Living alone in their old house, surrounded by relics of the past. The glow of my laptop screen became my only companion. That night, the rain lashed against the window pane, a steady rhythm that filled the silence of my room. The TV hummed softly in the background, its dull drone failing to distract me from my thoughts. I scrolled mindlessly, diving deeper and deeper into the internet's endless void until I stumbled upon something that made me pause. The last site you'll ever visit. The words burned into my mind the moment I saw them, stark against the black background of the page. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. A single blinking cursor appeared. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. And before I could type anything, lines of text filled the screen. My name, my address, things I had buried deep inside, secrets I'd never told a soul. My stomach clenched, and a cold sweat prickled my skin. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. It had to be a prank, a well-executed scare tactic, yet the gnawing feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Morning brought no relief. My inbox was flooded with cryptic emails from anonymous senders, subject lines whispering things only I would know. My phone buzzed non-stop with calls from unfamiliar numbers, messages popping up that I never sent. My meticulously organized calendar was now filled with meetings I didn't remember scheduling, with names I didn't recognize. Strangely, everyone around me seemed unbothered, as if I had planned all of this myself. No matter how many times I deleted the link from my browser history, it reappeared. I wiped my hard drive, reset my devices, even bought a brand new laptop. But it was always there, a constant reminder of the night I'd made a mistake I couldn't undo. It was like the link had become a part of me, feeding on my thoughts, my fears. Then reality itself started shifting. My keys would disappear, only to turn up in bizarre places. My TV switched on by itself at odd hours, displaying twisted images and voices distorted beyond comprehension, whispering my name. The sense of being watched grew stronger, pressing down on me with every passing day. Time became unreliable. Hours would vanish, leaving me with only fragmented memories of what had happened. People would reference conversations I didn't recall, events I never attended. The weight of it all pressed heavily on me. The paranoia, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Friends and family noticed, their eyes filled with concern, their words tinged with doubt. Even sleep offered no sanctuary. The black screen, the blinking cursor, they haunted my dreams, twisting into grotesque figures and endless whispering corridors. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the taste of dread thick on my tongue. Then came the doppelganger. Social media accounts I hadn't created sprang up overnight, filled with pictures of me in places I'd never been, surrounded by people I'd never met. "He belongs to us now," the captions read. Every notification sent another jolt of terror through me. Desperation took hold. I smashed my phone to pieces, feeling a twisted sense of relief. But the next morning, there it was again, sitting on my nightstand, fully intact, the cursed link waiting for me. Even my reflection betrayed me. My face looked off. The features were mine, but something in the eyes was wrong, distant, as if something else was looking back at me. My clothes felt unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else. My own existence was being rewritten, and I was powerless to stop it. I tried to run. I left the house, moved across cities, changed everything I could, but it didn't matter. The link followed me, a digital phantom that refused to let go. No matter how far I went, the whispers always found me. Then one night, exhausted and desperate, I found myself standing on a deserted street corner. The rain soaked through my clothes, but I barely noticed. My laptop sat in my hands, glowing ominously in the dark. The cursor blinked, taunting me. My hands trembled as I reached out. But before I could do anything, a car screeched to a halt beside me. A woman leaned out the window, holding up a phone. My phone, the one I had destroyed. "Looking for this?" she asked, her voice smooth, almost amused. Before I could answer, dizziness overwhelmed me. The world spun, and I collapsed onto the pavement. The last thing I saw was her cold, knowing smile as she stepped out of the car, her shadow stretching over me like a looming spectre. And then, nothing.